What's up guys, Saif Ashraf here. Today I'm going to be giving you my review on the iPhone 13 Pro from the perspective of a lifelong Android user. This is my first iPhone, I've been using it for a week now. Let me tell you guys about what I think. So let's talk about the design first. Now, the back, the matte finish, the graphite specifically that I've got here. I know it looked blue in the thumbnail for some reason, I don't know why, I was using a blue light. But yeah, I've got the graphite and it feels extremely premium. You won't be catching a lot of fingerprints on the back of this phone because obviously the matte finish. However, the Apple logo might, so yeah. We've got the huge camera bump on the back of this phone housing the 3 lenses and the LiDAR sensor, including a flash and a microphone, which we will be talking about in a bit. Holding the phone in a natural position, for me especially, I noticed that my finger often covers the lenses, which is a bit annoying, especially the LiDAR sensor, because it makes smudges come on the lenses, which then means that like when taking a picture and I haven't noticed that the lens is dirty, the picture will come out a bit smushed, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's the only complaint about the back of this phone. We've got obviously the stainless steel rails on this phone, which look very, very nice when clean. But when holding the phone normally, you will catch a lot of fingerprints on the side railings. And then looking at it with fingerprints all over, it just looks messy. So I'd advise putting a case on this phone. The overall placement of the power button and volume buttons is also great. In a natural position, my finger is right on top of the volume buttons, which I love. The S10 Plus, I had to reach all the way to the top to even turn on my phone, which was annoying. So not much has changed from last year's iPhone 12 Pro design, except for obviously the camera bump getting a bit bigger. To be honest, by a bit bigger, I mean a lot bigger. This covers a lot of the phone. And also the notch at the front did get smaller. Not by a lot, by 20%, which for people coming from iPhone 11s might be a bit noticeable. However, me coming from an S10 Plus, yes, it's noticeable that there's a notch there, since the S10 Plus had a hole punch display in the top right of the phone. I'd prefer the hole punch display because it just takes up less room. The notch definitely is noticeable when using full screen apps or watching a video in full screen. If they did make the notch smaller, couldn't they add like a battery percentage in the top right? It would be so much easier. I hate swiping down just to check how much battery I have. Apart from that, overall design feels great. One thing to note, it is heavier by about 8% from last year. This is much heavier than my actual S10 Plus. In the hand though, feels great. Overall, great quality and great design. Now let's talk about the front, the actual screen. Apple have finally added their 120Hz ProMotion this year to their phones, and to be fair, it looks good. Apple have definitely done it right, even though it took them 4 years to do it. This is a 6.1 inch display, so yeah, it's quite a big phone. It's comfortable enough to fit in your hand. Videos on this phone look great. With a peak brightness of 1200 nits and a normal max brightness of 1000. This display is also viewable outdoors. And also, if you are in your bed and you need to check your phone, the minimum brightness, I hope it could have got a bit lower. Sometimes, you know, when you really wake up in the middle of the night to check the time, and yeah, I guess the phone can get a bit bright. The 120Hz though feels as smooth as ever, with the overall iOS running smooth as well, with no lags, no stuttering. Because this is an LTPO panel, we also have the adaptive refresh rate, which means if you are just static on the home screen, it will refresh at about 10 Hz, saving battery. Obviously you won't see it on the screen you're watching because this is a 30 frame per second video, but in real life you will be able to notice the difference, especially if you're a tech geek like me. So overall display, quite good. It's just the notch, a bit annoying, especially here in 2021, where we have cameras literally underneath the display. The notch is fat. However, we do have the Face ID sensors, and reporting on the Face ID is as fast as ever, works at good angles. And yeah, I do wish we had Touch ID though, like maybe even on the power button. That would have been so useful. Quickly touching on the speakers, they get quite loud and don't get distorted at high volumes either. Overall sound quality is great, coming from such a small phone. I'm gonna get copyrighted. Now, moving on to performance. The chip powering this smartphone this year is the A15 Bionic, with the Pro series coming with a 6-core CPU and a 5-core GPU. Everything you're going to do on this phone will feel smooth AF. Playing games such as Genshin Impact on max settings also leaves this phone buttery smooth. The A15 Bionic is an extremely powerful chip which will last 3 to 4 years, even with lots of intensive apps coming out in the future. You've got a lot of power in your hands right now, and also for the longevity of this device you will have a lot of power going down the road. Now moving on to the huge cameras on the back of this phone. Before I even talk about anything, just wanted to say these are the best cameras I have ever tested in a smartphone, period. Now, Apple have basically upgraded everything with the sensors on the back of this phone. We've got the new sensor which was included in the iPhone 12 Pro Max this year on the normal Pro series with the larger sensor. We also have a new ultra-wide lens which should be able to gather more light. And we also have a new 3x telephoto. Talking about the main camera right now, it's going to produce amazing shots no matter what scenario you're in. If you give it a lot of light, it will obviously produce great colors, also great sharpness. Even though it's only 12 megapixels, the detail is still great. When you zoom in, you may lose a little bit of that, but the overall image looks amazing. There's also nice bokeh without portrait mode on the main sensor, which is really nice. HDR is also great on the main sensor. Taking pictures of landscapes, taking pictures of objects, everything you do on this main sensor will give back to you an amazing shot, which is Instagram ready. Now, moving on to the wide angle lens. The wide angle lens is definitely going to be one of my favorite lenses in any smartphone forever because it just gives you a new perspective of what you're taking a picture of. Because they improved the wide angle this year, you get, once again, great sharpness, great color reproduction. Everything is just perfect. The ultra wide angle may struggle a bit in low light, however, you do have the automatic timer which you can set manually as well. But for night shots, I would definitely use the main sensor as it is overall bigger and will gather more light. Now, moving on to the 3x telephoto, probably the most boring lens on this phone, probably the most boring part about this phone. However, it's just a 3x optical lens, literally nothing else. It's not like Samsung's 10x periscope lens or something, it's just a 3x. And yeah, I don't really use it that often, probably for portraits, as it does look good for portraits with the depth and the 77mm. But yeah, it's probably the most boring lens on this phone. We also have a LiDAR sensor, mainly just for used for better autofocus and portrait mode in the night. Now, video on this phone is great, and Apple have had the best video in any smartphone for quite a long time now, and they definitely do keep the record with this phone. This is currently 4K 30 footage coming out the iPhone 13 Pro's main lens, and to be honest, I'm really happy with it. This is probably the camera you'll be seeing a lot of footage coming out of in future videos. So, this is cinematic video coming out the iPhone 13 Pro at 1080p, 30 frames per second. In my opinion, it's not the best feature Apple has added. It really does need quite a bit of improvement. And yeah, basically all it does is the background gets blurred. I look a bit more like that, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. And yeah, overall, it does need a bit of improvement. Yeah, so the iPhone 13 Pro camera system overall is great. If you're the type of person to take a lot of pictures with your smartphone, there is no going wrong with this phone. A bit more footage for you from the iPhone 13 Pro using the main lens, 4K 30 frames per second. Let's talk about the battery like this. The battery life on the iPhone 13 Pro, it's incredible. So, for a bit of numbers, I use this phone for a total of 6 hours of screen on time doing multiple things, basically like TikTok, Clash Royale, using the camera quite a lot, social media and all of that. And I ended the day with 6 hours of screen on time, like I said, with 20% battery remaining. That's incredible. Apple did claim about 1.5 hours more battery life than last year's iPhone 12 Pro, and I'm definitely seeing the improvement. The very little bit of additional width, I guess, or like thickness they've added to the phone really helps with the battery life of this phone. I think this is one of the best batteries ever in an iPhone. And yeah, obviously the iPhone 13 Pro Max is going to be better. But for the size, the battery life is insane. So, in conclusion, this is the best smartphone Apple have made in my opinion. It's the perfect size for the average person with normal sized hands. Not to be rude with anyone with big sized hands. The cameras are also fantastic, the best in any smartphone right now. The display also is great, the 120Hz, and overall quality of the panel is great. Just I wish the notch could get smaller. Apart from that, everything about this phone is great. The only reason I would prefer Android right now is literally because of the OS. Otherwise, hardware wise, this phone is much better. Miles ahead of the S10 Plus X. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.